The fifth nanny didn't even last 3 hours. She walked out of the mansion with mascara running down her cheeks, her suitcase bumping behind her on the marble steps, whispering, "Those children don't need a nanny, they need a miracle." Inside the grand house, 5 young girls stood in the balcony, silent and expressionless, watching yet another woman leave their lives. Their father, millionaire investor Richard Hale, didn't even look up from his phone. He was used to people quitting, employees, friends, even family. But he was not prepared for what would happen next. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected heroes, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more real, heart-touching stories like this to you. Richard Hale was a man who owned half the skyline, but not a single moment of peace. After his wife died in a tragic accident 3 years earlier, his life became a battlefield. Money could buy comfort, luxury, and silence, but it could not buy healing. His 5 daughters, aged between 6 and 14, were left shattered. Their grief turned into anger, and their anger into rebellion. They destroyed rooms, screamed at staff, skipped school, and drove away every nanny hired to care for them. Therapists tried and failed. Counselors quit. Even relatives stopped visiting. The mansion, once filled with laughter, became a cold fortress echoing with slammed doors and broken hearts. Richard loved his daughters deeply, but he was drowning in his own pain. He buried himself in work, believing that time would fix everything. But time only made the girls more distant and hostile. He tried strict discipline. He tried gifts. He tried silence. Nothing worked. Each nanny arrived hopeful and left broken. The staff began whispering that the Hale house was cursed. One rainy afternoon, after another dramatic resignation, Richard stood alone in the massive living room, staring at the broken vase his youngest had thrown. For the first time, the powerful billionaire felt helpless. He didn't need another professional. He didn't need another expert. He needed something he couldn't define. That same day, quietly mopping the hallway floors, was Daniel Carter, a recently hired janitor. He was a single father, struggling to raise his 8-year-old son after his wife died of illness. Life had crushed him financially and emotionally, but it had also taught him patience, humility, and deep empathy. He worked long hours, spoke little, and kept his eyes down. To most people in the mansion, he was invisible, but Daniel noticed things others didn't. He noticed how the girls never ate together. He noticed how the oldest daughter lingered outside her mother's locked room. He noticed how the youngest cried quietly in the garden when she thought no one was watching. Daniel didn't see spoiled brats. He saw wounded children. One evening, while cleaning the playroom, he found the youngest girl, Lily, sitting under a table hugging a torn teddy bear. She looked up at him with red eyes. She expected him to scold her for the mess. Instead, Daniel gently sat on the floor and fixed the teddy bear without a word. He didn't lecture. He didn't threaten. He simply treated her pain with respect. That moment changed everything. The next day, when one of the girls spilled juice on purpose in the hallway, expecting anger, Daniel quietly cleaned it and said calmly that accidents happen. His voice carried no fear, no frustration, just steadiness. The girls were confused. Adults always reacted with control or punishment. This man didn't. Over the next week, something subtle began happening. Daniel started greeting the girls every morning. He asked about school. He remembered small details. He fixed broken toys. He cooked simple snacks in the staff kitchen and left them where the girls would find them. No rules, no force, just quiet care. The girls tested him constantly. They insulted him, ignored him, tried to provoke anger. But Daniel never took it personally. He understood grief because he lived with it every day. Slowly, the walls began to crack. One night, during a violent storm, the power went out in the mansion. The girls panicked, screaming through dark corridors. Staff members were unsure what to do. Richard was away on a business call. In the chaos, Daniel gathered the 5 girls into the staff lounge. He lit candles and told them a story about how he and his son survived their first winter alone after his wife died. For the first time since their mother's death, the girls listened to an adult speak honestly about pain. Not from a textbook, but from the heart. They cried, and Daniel didn't stop them. From that night on, the mansion began to feel different. The girls started helping him clean small areas. They laughed when he taught them how to fix simple things. They asked about his son. They began sitting together at meals. Not perfectly, but better. Richard noticed the change but didn't understand it. The house was quieter, school reports improved, staff complaints stopped one evening. He asked the head housekeeper what had happened. She replied simply, "It's the janitor." Richard was stunned. He called Daniel into his office, expecting an explanation. Daniel nervously explained that he hadn't planned anything. He just treated the girls like children who were hurting, not problems to be solved. Richard was silent for a long time. That night, for the first time in years, Richard sat with his daughters at dinner. They spoke about school. They laughed. They argued gently. They were a family again, fragile but real. Weeks passed. Richard learned about Daniel's life, about his son, about the medical bills, about the debt, about the grief. The billionaire who could buy anything realized that the poorest man in his house had given him something priceless, his family back. Near the end of this story, if it is already touching your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who believes in kindness. Stories like this deserve to travel far. One afternoon, Richard invited Daniel into his office again. This time, he didn't sit behind the desk like a boss. He sat beside him like a man. He told Daniel that money had failed where compassion succeeded. He offered him a new position, not as a janitor, but as a family caretaker and advisor, a permanent role in their lives. Daniel hesitated. He didn't feel worthy. Richard replied that worthiness is proven by actions, not titles. Daniel accepted, not for the money but for the children. Months later, the mansion no longer felt like a museum. It felt like a home. Laughter returned. Family photos replaced cold art. The girls began visiting their mother's room together, not in silence but in healing. Richard finally allowed himself to grieve openly, and Daniel, the man no one noticed, became the foundation that held them together. Before the ending, write in the comments, "Kindness still changes lives." Years later, Richard would tell interviewers that the greatest investment he ever made wasn't in companies or property. It was in a broken janitor with a good heart. Because sometimes the person who cleans the floors is the one who rebuilds the family. If this story moved you even a little, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps spread stories that remind the world that kindness still matters.